The river had always been my escape. Whenever life got too loud, that quiet stretch of water outside Cedar Ridge seemed to silence everything. I came here to think, to breathe again. Ryan, my boyfriend of 4 years, had told me I needed a break anyway. He was buried in work, barely looking up from his laptop when I left Friday morning. I told him I'd call once I got to the cabin. He just said, "Sure, be safe." No hug, no kiss, just a wave. By the time I reached the cabin, the late summer air was warm, heavy with pine and river mist. I spent the first few hours unpacking, setting up my kayak, trying not to think about the distance between Ryan and me. Lately it felt like we were sharing space but not a life. He talked about deadlines, bills, plans. I talked about nothing at all. That evening the river looked calm, glass-like, inviting. I decided on a short paddle before sunset. I slipped into the kayak, the paddle slicing through golden water, my thoughts drifting farther away from everything that felt broken. The sound of crickets filled the air, the smell of wet earth and cedar trees wrapped around me. For a while I felt free, then the wind shifted. Clouds rolled in faster than I expected. The surface rippled, then twisted into small waves. Before I could turn back, the kayak jolted against a submerged branch and flipped. The shock of cold water stole my breath. I tried to surface, but my jacket snagged on the seat. Panic took over, water in my mouth, lungs screaming. I clawed upward, light fading, until I felt a grip, strong hands under my arms pulling hard. Next thing I knew, I was coughing on the riverbank, mud on my hands, lungs burning. A voice broke through the ringing in my ears. "Hey, stay with me." "You're okay." The man leaned over me, soaked, breathing hard. His touch was firm but gentle as he checked my pulse. "You're safe now," he said again. I blinked, trying to focus. The man looked around 30, dark blonde hair plastered to his forehead, river water dripping from his sleeves. I was kayaking," I stammered. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I saw. Current caught you off guard. You're lucky I was nearby." He helped me to my feet and guided me toward a cabin just a few yards away. Inside, the air smelled like pine wood and coffee. He handed me a towel and motioned toward the couch. "You need to warm up. Sit tight." I wrapped myself in the towel, shivering. "Thank you," I managed. I'm Ethan, Liam, he said simply. I used to be a paramedic, so I guess the instincts kicked in. He made tea while I stared at the fire he'd started. My body trembled less, but something else stirred. A strange awareness, a warmth that wasn't from the blanket. Liam spoke calmly, his voice steady, almost soothing. He told me he'd moved out here a year ago after leaving the city behind. "Too much noise," he said. "Too many memories I didn't want to carry anymore." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Sometimes silence is easier." He looked at me for a moment, then smiled. "Until it isn't." For the first time in months, I laughed, a real laugh. The sound startled me. Liam smiled wider. "That's better." We talked for a while longer. I told him about teaching at the middle school, about Ryan, about how the river trip was supposed to help me reset. He listened without interrupting, eyes focused, patient. There was something in the way he listened, as if every word mattered. It had been a long time since someone had done that. When the clock struck 10, I stood, thanking him for everything. Liam shook his head. "You're not driving anywhere tonight," he said firmly. "You almost drowned, Ethan. Stay here, at least until morning." I hesitated. "I don't want to impose. You're not." "I've got a spare room. Sheets are clean, I promise." He smiled, soft, genuine. My chest tightened a little, though I didn't know why. Later, lying in that spare room, I could still hear the river outside and the faint hum of music coming from the other room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the calm in his eyes when I was gasping for air, the steadiness in his voice. I told myself it was gratitude, nothing more. He saved me. That's all it was. But deep down, something about that night felt like the start of something I couldn't explain, something I shouldn't want, but couldn't ignore either. Morning light slipped through the cabin window, soft and gold. For a moment I forgot where I was. The air smelled like coffee and rain-soaked wood. When I stepped out of the guest room, Liam was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He looked up and smiled. "Morning, hero," he said lightly. I chuckled, still embarrassed by the memory of him dragging me out of the river. I think you've got the wrong guy. You're the hero. Maybe, he said. But you fought harder than most would. He slid a mug toward me. Milk, no sugar. You look like that kind of guy. He was right. It made me laugh again. For a moment, it felt like we weren't strangers who'd met in chaos. It felt easy. After breakfast, I offered to help fix the broken dock near the water, the one he mentioned needing repairs. At least let me do something to thank you, I said. Liam hesitated, then handed me a hammer. We spent hours working side by side under the sun, wood creaking beneath our feet, river glittering below. There was a rhythm to it, the kind of quiet teamwork that doesn't need words. Every now and then, our hands brushed as we passed tools back and forth. Each time it felt like something more than coincidence. When we took a break, I pulled out my phone. There were messages from Ryan. Glad you made it okay. Call me when you can. I stared at the screen for a long time before setting it down. I didn't know what to say anymore. Liam noticed, but didn't pry. He just said, "Sometimes silence says enough." We went back to work. The conversation that followed was light at first. Stories about my students, about the stray cat he'd adopted that kept vanishing into the woods. But slowly, it shifted. He told me about being a paramedic, about losing someone he couldn't save, a young man his own age. It haunted him, he said. That was when he decided to leave the city behind. I figured saving people doesn't always happen in ambulances, he said softly. Sometimes it's just about showing up when someone needs you. Something about that hit me hard. Maybe because I hadn't felt seen in so long. That evening, we grilled dinner outside, simple food, quiet conversation. The air smelled of smoke and river mist. As the sun dipped low, turning everything gold and red, Liam put on a record inside the cabin. Old slow music filled the air, echoing off the walls like memory. I caught myself watching him as he leaned against the window frame, talking about how peace doesn't always come easy. There was something steady in the way he spoke, like the river itself. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The quiet between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy, charged, and oddly comforting. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Rain started falling again, light at first, then steady, tapping on the roof like a heartbeat. Liam turned down the music and stood beside me at the window. The rain blurred everything beyond the glass. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Yeah," I replied, though I wasn't looking at the rain anymore. We stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth. My chest tightened. I wanted to move, to say something that would release the tension hanging in the air, but I couldn't. I could only breathe. After a long moment, Liam whispered, "You should probably get some rest." I nodded quickly, stepping back. "Yeah, early drive tomorrow." He smiled, just barely. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night." Back in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, heart still pounding. Outside, I heard him moving through the cabin, turning off lights, locking doors. Then, footsteps paused near my door. Just for a second, then silence. He'd checked on me, maybe out of habit, maybe something else. I didn't know which scared me more, the idea that he cared, or that I wanted him to. When I finally closed my eyes, sleep didn't come. All I could think about was that river, the way it pulled me under, and how he'd been the one to save me. But maybe what scared me most wasn't nearly drowning in the water. Maybe it was the thought that I was already drowning in something else entirely, something I didn't understand and couldn't stop. The next morning, Liam drove me back toward town. Neither of us said much. The silence felt thick but not empty. As we neared the bridge that crossed the river, he finally spoke. "Sometimes the people we save end up saving us too." I turned toward him, but he was watching the road. I wanted to say something, anything, but all that came out was a quiet, "Thank you." He smiled, eyes soft. "Take care of yourself, Ethan." When he dropped me off near my car, the world felt still. I stood there watching his truck disappear down the road, wondering how a stranger could come into my life for just one day and leave me feeling like I'd been changed forever. Back home, everything looked the same, but nothing felt that way. The familiar scent of Ryan's cologne lingered in the air, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the steady rhythm of city life outside our window. Yet somehow it all felt quieter. Or maybe I was just listening differently now. Ryan met me at the door that night, wrapping his arms around me with a sigh of relief. "You scared me," he said. "I read about someone going missing on the river." "I'm okay," I told him, my voice steady. "Someone helped me." He nodded, half smiling. "I'm glad." Then he went back to clearing dishes off the table. The conversation ended as quickly as it began. For the next few days, I moved through my life like nothing had changed. Teaching, classes, making dinner, small talk with Ryan. But there was a quiet distance between us that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just him. It was me. Something inside me had shifted. I found myself thinking about the cabin, about the smell of pine and rain, about Liam's quiet voice saying, "You're safe now." I told myself it was just the memory of being saved, that anyone would feel connected to someone who pulled them from the river. But deep down, I knew it was more. One evening, while Ryan worked late in the living room, I sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker. The air was cool, the kind that hints at fall. Ryan stepped outside and leaned on the railing beside me. "You've been quiet," he said. "I guess I've had a lot on my mind." He nodded slowly. "About the accident?" "About everything," I said. "Us." That caught his attention. He turned toward me, concern creasing his brow. "What do you mean?" I took a long breath. "Ryan, when I was out there, I thought about what would have happened if I didn't make it. And all I could think was, would you even notice? Would it matter?" He looked hurt, but didn't interrupt. "I met someone who reminded me what it feels like to really be seen," I continued. "It wasn't physical, it wasn't anything like that. But it made me realize how much we've lost." Ryan's eyes softened, though pain flickered there. "Do you have feelings for him?" I hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe not love. Just connection. The kind we stopped having." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe we both stopped trying. I thought keeping things calm meant keeping us safe. Maybe I was wrong." That night, there were no arguments, no tears. Just silence, the kind that's both heavy and healing. Over the next week, we talked more than we had in months. Small things at first. Plans, memories, where we went wrong. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Still, part of me needed closure, not with Ryan, but with the man who'd unknowingly changed everything. So, one weekend, I drove back to Cedar Ridge. The drive felt longer this time. The trees were beginning to turn, the river glinting between gaps in the woods. When I reached the familiar trail leading to the cabin, I stopped short. The yard was overgrown, and a for sale sign leaned crookedly in the grass. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. The windows were empty, the air still. Inside, through the dusty glass, I could see faint outlines of furniture, the same couch, the same wooden table. Then I noticed something taped to the door, a folded note with my name on it. My heart thudded as I opened it. "Ethan, if you're reading this, I've already moved on. I didn't want to complicate your life. You have someone waiting for you. Don't lose him the way I lost someone once. Sometimes saving someone means letting them go. Liam." I stood there for a long time, listening to the river's steady rhythm in the distance. The same water that nearly took my life had brought me the clarity I didn't know I needed. I walked down to the bank where it happened, the place where he'd pulled me up, gasping for air. The river looked calm now, like it had no memory of that day. I whispered, "You saved me twice, Liam. Once from drowning, and once from myself." The wind moved through the trees, gentle and familiar, like a response I didn't need to hear to understand. When I drove back home, the sky was streaked with orange and gray. Ryan was waiting by the window when I pulled in. I waved, and he smiled. Small, but real. Inside, the house felt warmer than before. He handed me a cup of tea without saying a word. I took it, realizing that love isn't always about fireworks or fate. Sometimes it's about showing up, being honest, choosing each other again, even after everything. That night, lying beside him, I thought about Liam one last time. I didn't regret meeting him. Some people walk into your life to stay, and others appear just long enough to remind you who you really are. And maybe that's enough.